Thank you very much. Thank you, Evan, for this opportunity. Thank you all for being here. It's an honor and a pleasure to be at the Cape. Always dreamed to live here one day, maybe. I love the beaches. So form-based code is just what the word says, form. Traditional or conventional zoning does it by land use. But let's start with this picture, for example. This is a very specific proposal I designed with my principal planner, Jerry Katz, who's a brilliant illustrator when we worked in Woonsocket. This is our Amazon HQ2 proposal for Woonsocket. It was one of a kind nationwide because it did not use technology in a way that it dehumanizes the human space. So instead of using computers, this is all computer generated, all digital. All the line drawing is mine, and all of the illustration and colorization is from Jared, with us going back and forth to get a specific way of humanizing space. In general, this idea shows that through conventional zoning, this would never be possible. Why? Because when you design for form-based, you focus on form, not land use, not abstraction. So desired outcomes. What do we want it to look like? How do we want it to look like? How far do we go and where do we want it? Form-based code is a very flexible tool that you can use for whatever you want. You can do a specific site. You can do a general plan for part of the downtown or your rural area. The idea is, do we want to design for things for humans to use that we can see at the outset what they will look like and control that form? For example, I usually say that form-based code is about life. It's about creating places, and places usually attract people or businesses for 4 basic reasons. 1, it's beautiful. 2, it's meaningful. 3, it's functional. And 4, it's safe. And safe is not a police action. It is places that people feel comfortable with lighting, human presence, form, and also above all, it is designed for people and not for cars like we did the last 40, 50 years in America. So it's about place above all and how we want it to look like. We can start with a couple of questions that I like to ask and explain so you can see how form-based code is not just a technical tool. It's not a going between A and B. It's about what you want your town to look like and how you want it to function. So first question, for example, do you want predictability? I don't think that's the first one. Sorry. All right, all right. So the first one will be, could we go back to the first question? Yes, so is form-based code for you? Is that right? No, that's quite all right. So is form-based code for you? Because it's a one-size-fits-all, not like zoning that we have today, you can actually tailor to whatever you want, like we just discussed. So what does Mashpee want is different than what New York wants. It's different than Paris wants. But they all did one thing, and this has been going on for thousands of years. They controlled form, beauty, meaning and function, and safety through the design and not through the legislation. People don't live in ordinances. They don't live in books. They don't live in laws. They live in places. So you can imagine a place that is ugly or unaesthetic, if you don't like the word ugly, that is unsafe, that is unruly, and that is meaningless. You can think probably a lot of spaces. We're going to get into them in a little while. And you could probably think of them and say, what would I invest there if I was a businessman? Would I live there? Probably not. But I think you can imagine places that you love, that you care about, that are beautiful, meaningful, functional, and of course safe, and you want to be there. That attracts business. So this is a huge economic development tool, and we'll get into that in a minute. So the first one is, I think we want a little bit, a little bit back. I think you're getting ahead of me. So we talked about this. So do you actually want Mashpee to be beautiful, meaningful, memorable, functional, and safe? Sameness doesn't attract anyone. You know, no one goes to Paris because it's the same as everything else. They go because it's unique, because of its character. And that comes with history, comes with identity. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute too. It comes with memory, and that we build over time, right? So our heritage, everything we inherited should be our inspiration, but we also have to be inspirational to add to it, and that adds beauty and meaning. If it's not relevant to my life and to what my values may be, I may not be interested to live there or make a business. I don't know. So if that is a good answer, then it's for you. The second one, do you want predictability around the quality of life in Mashpee? This is a huge problem for investors and people to live in general. So if you're living in your neighborhood and you don't know what's going to happen next door, do you feel okay with that? We get that every day. This board gets it every day. Zoning board gets it every day. Council gets it every day, right? So if you want predictability, how do you do that? Is it less detail or more detail? You would probably want more detail. So you have to work out what your vision is. And the vision isn't just what the comp plan or master plan says. It's not an overarching, bland idea, which is great to have. This is my goal. But how do you get from I want my town to be great, and what does that mean, until it's built tomorrow, until somebody pulls a permit? What is that bridge? With conventional zoning, we don't have that bridge. And we'll get into the good and bad part about zoning. There's some good part about it, but mostly produces places where we don't control quality of life, and that gives us a lot of anxiety and a lot of conflict too. Do you think Mashpee's character identity is worth preserving? I know it's a huge question, right? And can we define identity? Can we define character?
We sure can.
We sure can. And character can be good and bad. So I live in North Providence, and if I don't know if any of you have been to North Providence lately, Mineral Spring.
Beautiful street.
Yeah, it's got character. It's not the one I want. It's unsafe. It's not beautiful. It's not functional, and it's not meaningful. I would never walk in its sidewalks. I would never want to live there or put up a business. And there are businesses there. But nobody walks on the sidewalks. It's not meaningful. It's not beautiful, and it's not functional. And it's really not safe because it's just built for cars, like parking lots. I feel very, very unsafe in a parking lot. When I'm walking, I feel like someone's going to hit me. And when I'm driving, I feel I'm going to hit somebody. So I'm just very, very worried about using parking lots. So just about a little bit about identity. So identity is about memory. One of my specialties is history of architecture and urbanism. I was looking for identity in the island where I'm born. Because as you know, I don't know if Evan told you, I'm a native of Portugal and of the Azores, so I love water, lots and lots of water. So memory. As an architect, I was trained to be a designer. But then when I went into the practice, I started to have a few issues with what am I designing? Why am I designing? Where am I going with this? And I felt that they needed a net. And that net I found was history. It doesn't tell us any truths. It just gives us guidance about what we have done, who we are, how unique we are. And that should be a point of inspiration. Sure, we need the future. Sure, we need to craft our future today. But it shouldn't be at the expense of the past and vice versa. And that's where identity comes from. And I'm sure you agree, that is one of the most powerful things that you want to preserve. Because then you become like everybody else. Sameness, correct? So the next question, Evan. So do you want Mashpee's destiny to be decided by Mashpee? I can certainly guess what the answer to that will be, right?
That's right, yeah.
I take it down to this family level and to the personal level. Do you want control over your life? Most people say absolutely, right? Do you want control over your family? But I mean control, the destiny. I don't mean controlling. Do you want to shape? Do you want to be an active part of shaping your future in a way that makes sense to you? Or do you want to be just on the receiving end, always behind the 8 ball, being reactive all the time? And what does that amount to? Right? Every developer comes into town. They tell you what they want. You don't know what you want in terms of form. You don't know what it looks like. They're telling you, and you're fighting them all the time as to where you want to go. And you're discussing philosophy, you're discussing zoning, you're discussing land, you're discussing everything in every project and every meeting. No wonder you're here for hours, right? It's exhausting. And so do you want more efficient and compatible economic development? Do you want to make it easy? Do you want to make it simple for your developers? Do you want to be more compatible with your zoning and what you want for your town? Or do you want to continue to go in the road of conventional zoning with the conflict of not knowing what's going to happen next and having to fight tooth and nail for every item on the table? Every project forever. That's what we've been doing for about 70 or 80 years in America. It's exhausting. And it doesn't produce an overarching and a vision for the town. And you don't know what's going to happen because 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 2.1 plus 1.3, what does it amount to? And then generation after generation, what happens 20, 30, 40 years later? If there's no vision to get there visually, what are you getting? The sum of something you don't control completely. That to me is unsettling as a designer, as an architect, and as a citizen, because I'd like to know that tomorrow I'm not going to wake up and I'm going to have a factory next to me, or a big house next to my single-family home, or vice versa. Or I have a gas station appear in front because it's an allowed use, but it's just not compatible. And also, do you want your developers, for example, to come into town and to go through the ringer, to go through all of these hoops to get to do something that you want? How about if they just pull a permit and just get it done? But you're not going to give them carte blanche. No one's going to walk into town. You're going to say, hey, just do what you want. Here are the permits. Don't worry about it. You want to control the form. But if you do that beforehand, if you do the legwork beforehand, you're telling the world two things. You're telling the world what you don't want, but you're doing it in a positive way. Telling the world what I want for my town. And if you want to participate in our vision for our town, happy, come on over. Pull the permit. It's easy. We've done the legwork. Sure, variances will happen. Sure, subdivision will happen. But not with the frequency and not with the conflict that you have today. And again, the control is in your hands. And here we are. So do you want less conflict, more clarity, and greater definition of the land development process that you administer every day? Would that be beneficial for you? Most people would say yes, right? So this is what happens with conventional zoning. Reality's down here, happening every day. You're walking down the sidewalk, you're driving to the school, you're dropping your kids off at school, you're going to the supermarket, going to work. Happening every day. It's all place-based. It's all real. It's not abstract. It's not in a book. It's not in an ordinance. And then conventional zoning is up here. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. Conventional zoning is a one-size-fits-all. So every residential here is 15 feet setbacks. All commercial is 20 feet setbacks. We've run into so many problems where we go into a part of town, a part of a neighborhood, and buildings have been there for maybe 100 years, 200 years, and they all have 10, 15-foot setbacks. Now zoning said that all residential is 30-foot setbacks. Imagine. And it's like really pushed back. And if you have build-out, which some towns have, like Westerly, and the pressure's on to build more buildings, now you have lots with driveways and buildings and back of buildings. 1 and 2 is okay, but if you do that throughout the town, what is it going to look like? Are you controlling that? One day, you're going to shriek, oh my God, what happened? What has our generation done? Did you control that and some? And it changes. This changes. You can change this anytime you want. It's not fixed in time. It's not set in stone. Every time you think your town needs a vision, a difference, a generation, or something big happens, you can change it, change the form. But it's about coherence. It's about also harmony instead of getting everything everywhere. And we're going to see pictures of what that looks like in a minute. So if you don't want conflict every day, people coming here, you get less, but zoning gets a lot, right? I want to do this. Well, it's not allowed. Why? I don't know. Somebody said it wasn't allowed. But why isn't it allowed? No one can answer that because, again, it's a one-size-fits-all, right? So if you have all of this laid out beforehand, and we're going to look at Mashpee Commons, how that is, and how that already is, already has been form-based code, you get rid of that. Clarity means you need to define. You can define as much as you want. You can even almost tell what kind of curtains you can have. I wouldn't go so far. People need to have the freedom, and architects need to have the freedom to imagine what society. Style is something in my mind that should be discussed between society, clients, and the legitimate artists, the architects, and the boards, and the town, where we want to go. It shouldn't be set by someone at any given time or place. Give the freedom to people to imagine. All of history was this. This is why we have different styles. If it wasn't that way, we wouldn't have Baroque, Rococo, Renaissance, Roman, Greek, and on and on and on. It would have just been one style forever, right? And we have to set ourselves. Again, our uniqueness. What is relevant and meaning to our time? That is important to have. But you can define that as far as you want, as much as you want, from the rural area all the way to the downtown. And the land development makes it easy. So if someone wants to come into Mashpee and do things, they find out the law of the land. It's laid out. This is what it wanted to look like, generally. So if you want to participate in our story that we're trying to tell, that's fine. You pull a permit. Some developers don't even come into towns because when they look at the abstractness and how difficult it is to go through boards, they don't even knock on your door. So you don't see that money. And when they do, if it's too difficult, they walk away. or everything is twisted into something that you're unhappy with at the end. Why not take that pressure off at the beginning, define it now calmly, and then when it's time to discuss, no, we know what we want. We know more or less where we want to go. We want exactly where we want to go, how far you want to go. And that conversation becomes easier, and it becomes more civilized, if you will. So there's not that conflict between you and the developer. And you get more done faster and better. Quality above all. Evan? So let's talk a little bit about conventional, traditional zoning, Euclidean zoning. So it's a product of the industrial era. And there was good reason for that. Back then, industrial cities in America, England, all over the world, they produced a lot of soot, a lot of unhappiness for people, right? Pollution. Brown fielding a lot, in New England especially, right? Right?
Yeah.
We welcomed the industry, but it wasn't clean. We know now it wasn't clean. We're striving for cleaner energy so we don't have these problems in the future. We learned with the past, but back then that was what was happening. So they had to separate uses. It was necessary. Even today, it is necessary to separate some uses. You don't want an industry next to your single-family home while you're barbecuing in the backyard. It's just not feasible, right? You should not want a gas station right next to where your kids play, a playground, for example, right? You should not want, for example, I don't know, liquor stores next to your schools. You probably don't like that. I wouldn't, right? So you need some separation, but you don't need to separate every use in the way that they're all boxed and nothing mixes like human beings. Think of a city as a product of mankind, which it is. So if we want to have a relationship, we have to find common ground. I have to know you, you have to know me, and we have to come together on things. We connect. If we don't connect, we don't have a relationship. It's a collapse of a relationship, correct? Cities are the same way. Because we build them for us to live. They're built for people. They're designed for people. The industrial era came, and it came to most of the world, and the separation of those functions were necessary. Still today a little bit. So they separated uses. They also separated densities. Small things here, big things there, right? We need harmony, so we can go from, and we see this in a lot of American towns. I mean, I was in Pittsburgh about 4 or 5 months ago to go to Main Street Now convention, and I went to Virginia for the FormBased Code, the first ever in our nation forum. It was quite nice to be there for the first time. And I call heart attack design, which is you have this wonderful 19th century building, 4 or 5 stories, and then you turn slightly to the left, and then you have like 60 floors. Regardless of style. That gives me a heart attack as a Southern European. That's really tough for me. So, and that goes on and on and on. And then you go down the street and you see a hole with nothing happening. And then you see a gas station set back, right? How many of us have gotten out of our neighborhood or other neighborhoods, whether it be in this town or other towns and cities, and we turn right coming out of our wonderful neighborhood, and it's like, wow, there's this like 3 or 4 family home or this block of apartments just appear right out of nowhere. It's horrible. Right? There's no harmony there. We can work it out. Through form, we can make sure that all of these forms may or may not work. Maybe it's one less floor. Maybe it's over there. Maybe it's a better shape, a different shape. And we can create thresholds, which we don't have. It goes from A to Z without any notice and without any type of warning. And that creates a lot of anguish also in the way we perceive space. And we're going to talk about a little book later on about how we perceive space. Welcome to Your World. Great author. Very new about neuroscience and how people perceive spaces and how we have not been attuned and sensitive to that and have been building places that we're not thinking of people and how we perceive it. No wonder we don't feel happy in them. No wonder we don't function well. No wonder we don't feel safe in them. And no wonder we don't care or love them, because if we don't love a place, I find that we don't defend it like people. So if they're not meaningful, how do I love a place? How do I defend it? I don't care. So I throw trash. So I don't care who does what there, right? So I lived there just a couple of years and I leave. Even rentals, why shouldn't people take pride in rentals? But if places aren't meaningful, they don't. They don't. And they separate incompatibilities of all kinds. And that was great in the beginning. But incompatibilities have to be worked out, not separated. That's too simplistic. Like human relationships, they don't work. They collapse and they collide most of the time when we don't work things through, correct? They fester and they die out. So the evolution of town or city conditions made conventional zoning an agent of this orderly town-city growth. I'm not going to talk much about that because we're going to see some pictures, right? And here it is. Woo! Back, oh, here we go. So this is what conventional zoning has done in extremis. So you see on the left, everything is the same. There's no character there. There's no individuality. We're not talking about crazy buildings where everything is all over the place, but some harmony. We can put to that. But look on the upper left. You look in the middle, on the upper middle, that's what happens when you design for cars. People have no place in it, and it's very unsafe. And let's not talk about how beautiful it is, right? It's just striping. Look at the right, top right. How do you feel about that? Every town has this little thing, right? It's called our commercial corridors, right? So we built and designed them for cars, right? It was great. So when we do that, then we need big signs because we have to scream, I'm here. Then everybody screams at the same time because everyone wants to be making business, which is legitimate. Fine, that's great. But is that the way to go? That's a cacophony. That's chaos, visual chaos. Every town in America has one of these. It was just a fad. We thought it was great, right? And then people started hating them. The new generations don't care for this. They want harmony. They're traveling to Europe. They're traveling to great towns like Boston. Who doesn't like downtown Boston, for example? The Commons, right? Beautiful, right? There's all styles of buildings there for the last two centuries and a half, I think. Bottom left. So that's what we do to our open space when we build just for cars. They take over, and we destroy our beautiful landscapes just to put cars going back and forth. And let's not talk about the commute, the time we spend of our lives going from A to B, and why, when everything could have been a little bit more organized, a little bit more together, so we could communicate better. So imagine if you live in a mansion of 800 rooms, right? When do you see your kids, I wonder, right? Probably have to yell at them. Dinner time, right? Everyone at the table, we need to talk. And they probably don't. Nowadays, we get that with the iPhones, right? They don't communicate anymore. That's a disconnect, too. It's a highway that we don't see, and it's disconnecting our society. It's desynthesizing our society. All of this desynthesized human relationships. No wonder we're suffering. Do you know what the number one health issue today in humanity? It's been identified? Loneliness. You know why? That created loneliness. iPhones, all of that created loneliness. People are isolated. They don't talk. They don't communicate. No wonder communication has collapsed. Even our verbalities collapse. They don't know verbs, adjectives anymore. They learn and they text stuff, right? At least they're texting, which is better than not, right? But hey, bottom, central, same thing. Wide roads, setbacks. Over there, do you see any harmony in that form? That's what conventional zoning does. It doesn't care about you. It doesn't care about form. It doesn't care about beauty, function, meaning, and safety. It just cares about uses, separating stuff as if it meant nothing to nobody. Just boxes. Boxes and uses. This is a box for selling clothes. This is a box for living. This is a box for selling ice cream. This is a box for getting gasoline. And here are all the roads to get from box A to box B. And this is what we get. And this is not the worst of it. I didn't want to shock you too much, but you've all seen this. And here's more. Oh no, I got shocking. So let's start with the map at the bottom left. Do you see any harmony there? Any respect for nature, open space? Any sensitivity to the beauty of nature? We've been living in nature for thousands of years. I love nature. We need the green in our eyes. It's good for our soul, right? Harmony with it. How about harmony with each other? Or do you see a society of me, right? All I care is about me. I don't care about you. I care about getting what I want. Who cares about the rest? And 2 plus 10 plus 15 plus 30 comes to a town or a city. And that's what you get. We built it. We did it. Didn't come from God. Didn't come from aliens. We did it to ourselves. We can do good and we can do bad. This is the worst of it. So on the top you see, top center, you see the setbacks and the voids and all of that. Without a good architectural wall, people are disoriented. They don't know where to go. And then it's dark at night. Who wants to live or even deambulate there at night? Who's going to go with their girlfriend, boyfriend, children, or grandchildren on the tricycle or eat an ice cream at night there? Yikes. I wouldn't. I don't. I'm afraid I don't. And I'm not a fearful guy, but I wouldn't. It's just not inviting. You know why? It wasn't designed for you. It didn't have you. in any consideration whatsoever. The top right, you're going to say, hey, better, right? You see the grass, the houses, looks like a nice neighborhood, right? Do you see any place for human beings there? Any sidewalks? So if you want to go to your neighbor's house, you go on the street, you're going to get hit. You risk that. And then the street is so wide. Why? Because of our fire trucks, and they're necessary, but when they get too wide, they promote speed, lots and lots of speed, right? Even those little curves, they speed. And you see on TV cars speeding at night. I know they're drunk, and they hit trees, and they hit people, and they go into living rooms, right? So we design for cars. That's what we get. So it looks nice. I put that one on purpose. It looks nice, but you can't get to your neighbor's house. If your kid wants to go on the bike, it's on the street. No safety whatsoever. So that's very appealing as it seems, but it's not, because it wasn't designed for you. It seems so. So you're supposed to get in your house and get out of your house with your car. That's it. That's for cars. That's it. Done. And at the bottom, of course, that's the worst of it, right? When we really love places, that's what it looks like. I'm joking, obviously. That's what happens when people stop caring, because it's not beautiful. And some of those buildings were actually beautiful at one time, but it just stopped working because we made it so. So it's not beautiful, it's not functional, it's not safe, and it's surely not meaningful. Because again, I think people defend what they love, people and places. That's what happens when you don't. So a long, horrible, difficult definition. I'm just going to read through it really quickly. We can pick up on a couple of keywords, and then we can discuss it later if you wish, okay? So this is the technical definition of form-based code. So it is a method of regulating development to achieve a specific form. Again, we're regulating, and we're developing to achieve a specific form. How do you want it to look? And why do you want it this way? We do this with our houses. When we hire architects to design our homes, we tell them, I want one living room, I want open space, a kitchen this way, 3 windows. I love light in the morning. I'm a morning person, so I want like lots of light. I want a little nook, love my coffee, want my terrace. I like trees and the pond, and on and on and on. We have a wish list of form, because we live in form, right? Would you go up to your architect and say, hey, a house, a box, 3 rooms, separate them, I'm good? I'm sure people do that. They're not very happy, I hope. Yeah. I don't think they are, right? So create a predictable public realm primarily by controlling physical form. So predictable public realm. We're going to talk about what civic art is between public and private realm, but we need both. We need both, right? We can't leave just alone in the middle of the woods. We need sociability. We live with each other. We communicate. We need that. We get depressed if we don't have communication. Our brain is the biggest organ. It needs input all the time, and that's through human connectivity. So we want predictable. We want to make sure that we want to know what it looks like, and not just anything, and not always on the receiving end. That's a horrible feeling. With lesser focus on land use, it doesn't disappear, because we need to control land use as well, because again, we want to make sure that there's no conflict between uses. Through town regulations, you decide. A method of regulating a coding that promotes place-based planning and development. So it's specific. So you go into a neighborhood and you say, okay, what's the general character here? What's the identity? Is it all single-family homes, nice lawns? Do we want that to go away? We have a bunch of empty lots over there. What will appear there? Just a house? That's it? Is that enough? Or do we want to know it's the type of house? So if it's a big lot, through conventional zoning, you have the floor to area ratio. So if you have a big lot, you get a big building next to a small building. Is that harmony? I don't think it's enough control. So it promotes place-based planning and development in order for communities to become, once again, this is very important, livable. And livable isn't just breathing and eating and going to sleep. It's about the human connectivity. It's about the balance between the public and the private realm. It's about the beauty. It's about the function. It's about the safety. It has to be livable. Prosperous, so making it easy to make sure that you can develop what you want in a way that makes sense to you, but it's easy to do. It doesn't take forever and deter people from doing it. You give up. It's also socially enabling and makes sure that human connectivity exists. Make sure that our social needs are met between this balance of the public and the private realm, between my private home that defines the sidewalks, the plazas, and the squares. We're going to look at that in a minute. and of course beautiful. So beauty generally is built in. When we're born, we have a sense of beauty. You don't have to become an architect, you don't need to become an artist or have 3 PhDs in art to know that when you're looking at, for example, St. Peter's Cathedral or St. Patrick's in New York, you know it's beautiful. You may hate the style, it doesn't matter. You know it's beautiful. It makes you feel good, it elevates you. But if you look at an ugly building or an ugly part of town, how does that make you feel? It's depressing. It's depressing, right? So let's control that in a way that makes sense to us. Using traditional town and village forms as the visioning element. So we're going back to traditional town design, not to emulate it, not to copy it, but because a lot in it actually made sense. So things like human scale, connectivity, the balance between the public and the private realm, they were there. We lost that. We lost that. We can design another style. That's fine. We can be ourselves today. That's fine and desirable. But have we lost those great values that make human life great in favor of cars and just making money and selling stuff? Have we lost our way a little bit? I have my answer. I'll let you have yours. We're probably going to agree on that as well. So, town village design. So, disciplined, varied, and permanent town and village growth. Forming walkable. It's healthy too. Physical and mental health. Great to walk. Type diverse. So you can choose. Doesn't have to be everything the same like that picture we saw. Every cookie cutter. It's not cookie cutter. It respects the individuality, but above all, the overarching need for harmony. So we can live together better. And use flexible. So it's use flexible. It can be mixed, it can be not. You do what you want, what makes sense to you. You're not fixed, you're not tied to something that is a one-size-fits-all, and you get the same thing over and over again. Okay? And buildings of town places. Again, place. Town design that creates immersive environments, places you want to be in, places you want to go back to, places you want to tell somebody to go to. You immerse in them because you feel good in them. Not just to buy a pair of shoes and leave because they're meaningless to you. So, which buildings, open space, landscape, and infrastructure are combined to produce memorable, permanent places. So not here today, gone tomorrow. Something that looks like it's going to last for a long time. We have beautiful churches, beautiful buildings in towns and cities across our land and across this world that we don't want them to go away because they're beautiful, they're meaningful. They're important to us as a community and as an identity. So they're memorable. And why are they memorable? Because they're not the same as everybody else and because they're beautiful. I will keep saying this over again, I apologize, but it is what it is. Beautiful, meaningful, safe, and functional. If they are, we want them. We want to keep them. We can do that with glass, iron, stone, brick, whatever you want. It's fine. Disciplines and validates existing settings. This is very important. We don't want anything to go away that we like and love. We want to preserve that. We want to make sure it stays. And why not inspire? I do that with my architecture, you saw in the beginning of the drawings. Okay? Promotes the design of new ones as integrated and connected physical places. This is very important. The new stuff has to be in line in a way that makes sense to the old. So it is a progression. It is not a cut. It is not a radical departure from anything. We want to be able to, if we value what we have, whatever style we do today, can be modern, can be whatever we want, it is in continuity and in harmony with. It's not in contrast or against it. That is very important. But how can you do that if you don't do the big vision, the big picture, overarching idea of what you want and how to control it, how to get it from here to there? Form-based code provides that. Better?
Better.
Better. I think it's better all around. So these are the places, they're very diverse, that form-based code can produce. Nothing radical, nothing out of this world. But you do see one thing in all of them, don't you? They are beautiful. They are meaningful. Yes, they're painted every other year or so, right? But let's look at the top one. So you have your coastal community. I know Mashpee's quite close to that. Westerly too. We have 46% of water in Westerly. So coastal communities. Our relationship to the sea, I love water as I've said, can be predictable, can be beautiful and functional, and has been. So the history of our fishing, our whaling, all of that invades our soul and our minds and our culture. And we need to protect that. We need to make sure that still makes sense, even if it's just a museum and a memory. It is who we are. And I would not let that go away by having people coming in, greedy for money and doing stuff, just doing anything and just destroying that. Would you like to see something like that destroyed? Regardless of style, would you like to see more of that harmony in our coastal lines? That would be nice, right? And then you see down here, right? That's nice. Do you think those people feel safe? That bikeway, right? It's protected. It's on the sidewalk. So I know you need wide sidewalks. But this happens when you have a lot of wide street that was for cars. This can be it in the future. You can transform it into something that makes sense to you in your community. Now you have people on the sidewalk biking. They can walk too, no conflict. These are complete streets, one of the names. You can design it whatever you want. You have the flowers. The cars are parked. On-street parking is very important. You get on, you get off. Creates connectivity, and it creates a barrier for kids. And it takes off the pressure of creating parking lot on top of parking lot on top of parking lot. Ask Hartford, Connecticut, among others. Yes, an architect did a form-based code. Beautiful. 40 years, they needed one. They did it. Unbelievable. It's going to take them like 100 years to get back. They destroyed everything. And it was beautiful in the past. When I see pictures of beautiful towns in the past, I mean, I want to cry. You know, why would you do this to yourself? You had it right. You let the car get in the way. You got bemused. Cars are not God. I love my car. It's really nice. But I'm not going to make it a God. Not anytime soon. I'd rather have people. The element of my interest. In the middle, you have something that's historic. But you can reproduce that in whatever style you want. It's built to the sidewalk. People get on and off. There's no cars in between you. Everything here is designed for people. And that's why you're attracted to it. Whether it's greener up there, a little lonely farmhouse, whether it's these row houses or these. Do you feel that it's beautiful? Do you feel that it's meaningful? Would you want to live there? Regardless of taste and style, would you want to live there? Right? Do you think it works for you? You park, you bike, you go fishing, you go shopping in the middle. Again, you put your car, there's your garage right there, but see how they did that? Nothing out of this world, but it does work, right? You have that little sidewalk, and it creates also a good visual amount of space so you can see cars coming out. It's safe for kids. They can bike there. That's fine, right? It's your neighborhood, right? It takes a little bit more investment, but hey, it's money well spent in my book, right? Could we see the next one, Evan? Thank you. And more. So let's look at more things. There's Boston, right? So Beacon Hill, right? You have Back Bay. Love going there. It's grand. I mean, look at the trees. Look at the form. It's all controlled. I did that because to the left it goes away. I didn't want to deter our attention. You all know Boston. And if you push that little old picture to the left and to the right, it gets worse. Towers and stuff, and they hollowed it out. I saw a map, I think, of 1878 from Boston. Oh, my God. Color one, a bird's eye view. Art, pure art. And then they just demolished it and demolished it. I don't know why. Do you not love that? Why would you do that to yourself? But it wasn't lack of love. It was they thought the cars and everything else was just great. Until one day we woke up and like, oh my God, what have we done? We have people, look at over there. That could be the Las Ramblas in Barcelona, but it could be New York. New York is actually form-based code intuitively. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, you may hate the towers. Okay, sure, that's fine. But it's one of the most walkable cities in the country, New York. Impressive, huh? 3 hours away. Well, less from here, I think. Maybe not. I don't know. I haven't put on my GPS. That wonderful street at night, do you feel scared there? And there's nobody there. That's on purpose. I didn't put a single person there to show you that even no one is there. Do you feel safe? Is it nice? Would you want to get out of your house or your car and walk there? Newberry's like that. I love Newberry. Right? So on the bottom, the same thing. Over there, you have a little bit more open space. Right? Your gazebo, your church. That didn't happen by chance, I guarantee you. There was intent, and that intent is form. People said, oh, we need a gazebo. We have a great little park. What is the style? Where are we going to put it? How big is it? What are we going to do? Who's going to use it? And then they all fight about who's going to do what and when. That's a good problem to have in my book, right? When people don't care about places, you have a problem. This is a great problem if people want to use it, right? So, and on top too, look at that wide, wide street. I know it's not the Commons. Commons is gorgeous with all the trees, right? But look how simple it is with the wide street. You just put a strip of grass, maybe trees, maybe no trees, right? And you make it more appealing. So there are ways to convert this. Some more expensive, some less, depending on how much money you have and how much you want to do. So you have more open space, less open space. You want more density, less density. You control that through form. So you start to think land use. So what are the size of the lots? What do I want on it? Is it farmland? And you draw upon it. You say, here is our rural area. We don't want pressure here from urbanization. We don't want urban developments here. We want to preserve our farmland. We want to preserve our farms and the identity of that. So you make sure that the forms that appear are in line with that.
So you can preserve any character you
Anything you want.
in form-based code.
Anything you want. Anything you want. Think about dressing. Can you dress any way you want? Yeah. Aha. Yes, you do. Of course you can, right? What's stopping us? Our mind. Maybe our friends, hey, you don't look good. Well, who cares about them, right? When they talk bad about us, we just like dismiss them. You can dress any way you want. Same thing, right? I can put on this, I can put on shorts. I'm still the same person. But do I do just any clothes? Do I wear what you wear? What Evan wears, what you wear? No. I wear because it's my identity. It messes with my identity. I don't want to walk away from my identity. So I have the haircut. Well, I don't have hair anymore. But when I had hair, I used to wear my hair. People don't mess with their hair. They don't like hairdressers to like just do anything, right? That really changes your character and your identity, right? So you're very sensitive to that, like clothing. Or your mannerisms. People are very sensitive. Why? They're you. Of course you protect that. They're you. And why wouldn't you? So you protect your form, right? So that's how we can do it. So it depends on what we want to do. So of course here you have more business. You have more mixed use when it's denser. And you would want that to create more business opportunities. And it's very friendly for businesses because, again, it's set out, it's detailed out, they pull a permit and they do it. They don't have to spend hours and months doing that. You've done your legwork. That's your great legacy. You say, hey, we're going to talk about it. We're going to take a deep breath, a step back. We're going to talk about who we are, what we want, and we're going to tell you. And when we do, if you want to participate again in our story of our town, please come in, pull a permit. It's about that easy. So it makes it easier for them to invest. Make sense? So, and of course the commons, that's a bigger thing. Now you need other instruments. You need a master plan, you need the visioning, you need to go through the whole same thing, same process, but the outcome is different. You want something different. Okay? So where does this all start? So back in 1892 with the City Beautiful, comprehensive planning came into play in America because we wanted better places to live. Because our cities were in soot, in disharmony, and all over the place in function. That's where zoning also appeared at the time, and it kept going. After the 1940s, we became in love with cars, and we started designing for them as we've seen. In 1922, a landmark book called The American Vitruvius. Vitruvius, if you don't know, is the Roman architect, one of the first named architects in the history of Western Hemisphere, is Vitruvius. He set a lot of rules, form-based rules, compositional rules, to put buildings together to fit temples, mansions, palaces, small houses. He put that together. It was like composing through a Lego system, if you will, almost automated, so architects would know. That was the classical way back then. But in 1922, a group of architects and developers came together and started to understand that we needed a better way to design our communities so they can be, again, beautiful, meaningful, safe, and functional. And they came up with a book that talked about how communities could be all of that. And then we let go of that for quite a long time. You see the jump from 1922 to 1998. So in 1998, a bunch of architects, developers, and all that came up with a little book, which is on my suggested reading list at the end of this presentation, called The New Civic Heart. It's new because it's based on that one. So do the math. 1922, that's a long time. Great hiatus, right? We lost a lot. We lost a lot. So they came together and they started to think about what makes places great, inspiring themselves again in traditional town design, from rural to the downtown, to see what we've lost. What were the components that we left behind? Why did we do that? And how can we get them back and to make, again, memorable, lasting places so we can all love to live and protect. And organizations sprang out of that. They're now nationwide. I belong to most of them, or all of them, and been to all of them. Congress for New Urbanism, don't be deterred by the word. There's a New England chapter. It's about all of the new civic art and the American virtue that was put back to life, if you will, so we can live better again. Grow Smart America, there's a chapter in Rhode Island as well, and there's one in Massachusetts. It's all over the country. It is a countrywide. I did that because I'm doing this in my planning board too next week, sorry. Using this as my entree. And they started to think about walkable, livable, sustainable communities coming together. And they're advocating for quite some time. In 2004, the FormBased Code Institute was formed. Not a long time ago. And last year was the first forum ever nationwide, which I've said I was honored to be there as a pioneer. I'll tell that to my grandchildren, that's for sure. That's for sure. It was a proud day. Not many people, about maybe 100 so much. And in Virginia, they'd been doing form-based code, reconverting a commercial strip since 1998. Over 300 meetings they had. They did a lot of legwork, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But you should have seen, we went there to look at it. Wow, I was impressed at the hard work and the product they came up with. Beautiful community. Main Street now, been going on for quite some time, 20 or 30 years. And that was in Pittsburgh last year I went. There, you saw the whole nation come together. So the heart of America, our downtown, our main streets, were coming alive everywhere. Some took 15, 20, 30 years. I believe Westerly has a beautiful downtown, as you know. Still a work in progress, but they've done great work in the last 15 years. It was dilapidated before that. Pawtucket, for example, had a beautiful downtown that's completely destroyed. Woonsocket, where I worked before, beautiful downtown, decimated, beautiful buildings waiting for love and care, and it's just not happening. Form-based code I proposed for that too, opening up a $140 million redevelopment opportunity, and just with that plan, getting $5 million from the tip. Not bad for a year's work. Why? They saw a plan, they saw it was great. They don't like black holes anymore for investment, so they started to throw money where people knew what they wanted to do and where they wanted to go. That also helps funding, I'm afraid. And last but not least, Reurbanize. Reurbanize is a younger institution that says basically demolition as a last resort. Love what you got. And they advocate for that. Beautiful buildings. Don't pull the permit, don't tear it down, preserve it so you can have memory, because without it you have no identity. Then where do you go from there? Thank you. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what makes a place great, the components. And this is where form-based code helps to do this, to create these places. But let's understand what place is first. And you've got them in town. When you look at these definitions and these pictures, images of what you know in your town to be like this will come to mind immediately. And that's a great thing. So, first and foremost, building and rebuilding a community. You can do one, you can do new, or you can rebuild if it went away in part, or bring it back. And definition of community as place. Community is not just a word. It's not a block party. It's not a barbecue. You build it, or you don't build it. Remember that image I showed before where you saw a big, wide, open street with people walking in the middle? Yeah, that's not place. That is not place. I hope they don't get hit. So this is place, and it's community. And community has two components, the public realm and the private realm, and the almost impossible balance between the two. It's always changing, it's not easy. But nothing in life is when it's good. So the combination of the public and private realm creates the true town. A reflection of that variable balance, it's always variable, of private rights, we have them, and the public responsibility that defines community. We also have that responsibility. The responsibility, again, to make sure that we're connecting, that we're communicating, and that we're safe and everything is great for us. Evan, I don't want to be too long. It's going to get a little bit boring, less pictures. So the public realm, quick definition. The public realm consists of thoroughfares, open spaces, and civic buildings that may be expressive, idiosyncratic, or unique. So your cathedrals, they stand out, right? Your art museums, they stand out. Your schools stand out. Why? because they're supposed to be important institutions that you celebrate, because they're the great values of your community. That's where you come together. Your parks, your plazas, your squares, and all of that. And that's where it comes from. And let's look a little bit at the categories. There are 3 of them. So there are public spaces, you know them. Those that invite, the ad hoc. It's never programmed. We do stuff, right? Public activity of mobility and formal gathering. It's informal, but it could be formal too, right? You go to the park, you bring your grandchildren, tricycle, you bike, you jog, you do a little bit of yoga, you just relax, read a book, get your lunch out, right? It's informal. You don't need someone to tell you, please stand this way, please open your lunch this way. None of that, right? You're free to do so. So there are, of course, they could be usually publicly owned. They usually are, okay? So your sidewalks, your plazas, your squares, parks, plazas, green systems, closes. They're more closed sort of courtyards, inner gardens, and playgrounds. And there's lots more. The civic spaces, those are the exceptional buildings within the public space. And the spaces in buildings, now we're talking about buildings, related to intentional and formal gathering. It's intentional now. So a church, a courthouse, a school, it's intentional to gather. An opera house, a theater, all of that comes to mind. Those are intentional and they are programmed, because you're not going to skate in the theater. I hope not, right? The government, gathering of government, for example, this institution is a civic space, the house of the people, if you will, in your town. Religious and other institutions that may be publicly or privately owned, right? This is publicly owned, but an opera house can be privately owned. It's still a civic space for everyone to enjoy. And last, the commercial spaces. There's centers, like your downtown, that host the public activities of commerce in a place organized by public or private initiative. Main Street America, for example, comes to mind. Okay? Next, we want to look at the private realm. So how do they come together? So one defines the other. It's the private realm that defines the public realm, curiously enough. And that consists of primarily of buildings that define the edges of the public space, like your sidewalks or your plazas or your parks. Should be essentially normative and recessive. That means that they shouldn't be as exceptional in architecture as your institutions. Otherwise, it becomes a cacophony. Everything is alike. So they play it down a little bit. So that way your institutions stand out. That's traditional town design. We've seen them all over the world and in our country, correct? So civic art, this is where civic art comes into place. Why is it civic? Because it's shared. It's not just my private collection. It's not just my house or my painting or my sculpture. It's a shared vision that creates art for everyone to live. And art, instead of an organism, oh, your town is an organism, it's a structure. It's like this thing that we don't know. No, it's art. It's beauty. Paris is beautiful. Downtown Boston is beautiful. That's art. It didn't happen by chance. And it's not just an organism. It's not science. It's not only science, if you will. So the disposition of the private building on its site, where is it? So if you put the building 30 feet back and you put parking spaces in front between you and the building, is that good civic art? I'm going to go with no. The configuration of the building, any shape, anything you want. Anything you want. We've seen pictures of anything you want a few slides back, didn't we? That wasn't very appealing. Do what you want. Doesn't matter. Of course it matters. And of course the function of the building. Everything over there is just, I don't know, clothing stores. Wow. So from my house to the clothing, that's what, 30 minutes? Ever been to Florida? Right? My sister bought a house that I don't know why, but she did, and we went down there. And my brother-in-law said, I'm going to go to Lowe's, get a couple of things just to move. Then we helped. And like, I'll be back in 2 hours. Like, what do you mean 2 hours? Why do you need 2 hours? Said, this is Florida. It takes me an hour to get there, and then probably another half hour to find stuff, and another hour back. I'm like, I'll see you like maybe dinner. I'm like, you're crazy. Why would you do this to yourself, right? So the function of the building is important. Separating uses is a big problem, because now I have to drive all the way to the other side of town just to get food. Then my tire's over there, and then my clothing is over there, and I got to get the kids over there. And then when we do all our lives, commute, commute, commute. So mixing a little bit more, not everything. We don't want all of our neighborhoods with everything mixed, but big cities are like that, and nobody dies. Of course, Mashpee is not New York, right? It's not Paris. So what works for them doesn't work for you, and it shouldn't. Because why? Your character, your identity is different. So that's how you place your buildings where you want them, so your community can come together and preserve your identity at the same time. So disposition and configuration determines type. So where it is and how it is your type of building, right? And building typology is an essential element of town or village design. That's what makes civic art. Lastly, civic art equals, it's more like a little equation, is a combination of building types and town space type and their respective detail. Syntax. We're going to talk a little bit about that very briefly. Evan, please. Thank you. So last but not least, the configuration of the building. Single and mixed-use buildings, everything fits. It's whatever you want. So typology, syntax, and coding for visual harmony. Typology is the general function, disposition, and configuration of the building. We saw that in the last slide. So you know what you want. Syntax is the detailing of the architecture. Please don't tell architects what to design. We hate it. But don't let them do just about everything. And don't let everyone just do whatever they want, however they want, wherever they want. That is not harmony. That's chaos. Okay, coding. Here we go. This is what you wanted. And if we take a step further, you're going to run out of the building because coding is kind of tough. But that's for the technical stuff. It's all here in this little book. We're going to look at it. Coding is what you do in zoning. Same thing, except it's oriented toward form and not land use and function. Okay? We're not going to get into that. But I want you to know about the components. This is more for you to read later on. We can talk about it at a later date if you want, when we talk about Mastery Commons and how this comes together. But these are the components. This is what form-based code does for you. Okay? So let's start from the top. Key principles for guiding code writing toward sustainable urban. When I say urban, it can be from your shoreline to your farms all the way to downtown. Just a general word. Development. So we start with vision-centered. What do I want? And it's not, oh, I wish it'd all be beautiful. I want it all to be graceful. That's not enough. That's complan talk. Way up there in the clouds, right? So it's FBC are always written as part of a master plan. Bingo. And at a master plan level, you get to talk a lot of detail. You do that every day, right? Master plan, preliminary, final. You're versed on that for sure, right? Evan loves it, right?
I love it.
Oh, yes, there you go. So the outcome of a planning process binding private and public interests onto a common vision for a desirable future. It is binding. Okay? I want it. And I want you to do it. It's not look, oh, I wish you did it, like the comp plan or those generalistic master plans. It would be wonderful if you could like come around and do it. No, that's not how it works. It's like, this is how I want my town, and private and public are binding. You decide. It's purposeful, so FBCs are priority driven, right? Concentrating on regulating with emphasis on those places that are prone to change. Be careful of what's changing around you. You want to control that because what's built is built. What are you going to control? Rehab it, don't knock it down, don't put these kind of functions there, don't sway away from our vision. But the new stuff that can spring around it, that could really cause some damage. And that's where all of the blind stuff comes in. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. What is this developer going to do? What is he going to come at me with? How do I deter this? How do I dissuade this? And that is all a hard conflictual look we just don't want in our lives anymore. And that provides an answer. It's place-based, again, always place-based. So code prescriptions are carefully calibrated to be specific to the setting to which they are applied. They are specific. So again, your little farmland, your brooks, your downtown, everything is specific. It's not like conventional zoning up here, one size fits all. Everyone does the same thing anywhere. And then somebody says, well, I have a beautiful building. Well, it doesn't matter. It's for everybody. No one gets to be specific. You're all alike. Right? That's what we built. Continuing, analysis of existing natural, physical, and social conditions within a project. It's also social. Do we want to dismember how people are living great in this community? Or do we want them to live better? How do we do that? We just ask them? Do we get grants and give them money? Do we train them? I don't think so. We build places where they do act and function that way. Right? When you walk into the cathedral, don't you stand upright like, ooh, right? Commands attention, right? Living room, not so much, right? So architecture does command attention. It gives importance to us. And it tells us, this is an important building, please respect it. In your house, sure, you want to respect it, but, shorts, flip-flops, it's fine, right? So physical diversity is favored and guaranteed by providing for a wide variety of potential development and conservation intensities. You can do whatever you want. This is kind of important because these are the core components that this tool gives you. So just please bear with me a little bit longer. Consequential urbanism, town design, whatever you want to call it, is not an exercise in beautification, not lipstick on a pig. Oh, this is ugly. If we just put banners and trees, it'll be fine. I think like a lawyer, I act like a doctor. I look at the patient. If it's sick, a great shirt's not going to help, right? A great hat. And let's go out for drinks, not going to help. You got to go in there, you got to find out what the problem is. So it's not just beautification. That comes later. It's part of the plan, right? So it is an economic development engine. Woo, thank you. It's an economic development engine. FBCs delivers a strategy for improvement calibrated to the local economic opportunities that the market can deliver. It's not the sky is the limit because then you destroy what you have if you don't contain it, right? So that wonderful tower in Providence, how do you feel about that? You've seen it on TV. You haven't? Oh, no.
Well, I know.
Oh, you haven't. Okay. So, yeah. So downtown Providence, a little bit away from the downtown area, they want to put this huge tower just because. And it's like it's giving a lot of people a heart attack. So we don't want that. That doesn't make economic sense because what's going to happen in that tower is that you're going to put all of the, like big mills, you put all of your housing in there, and then what happens with your neighborhoods? They get boarded up. And you're paying for that infrastructure. You're paying for the electricity, repairing the sidewalks, you're plowing the streets and all that. You're paying for it, but it's getting boarded up. Why? Because you're putting it all over there. Right? It's an imbalance. No overarching idea. So it's not an economic engine when it does that, right? So FBC opens up opportunity for economic growth by creating the path for businesses right at the outset. They don't have to come and beg for it every time. You're like, oh, I don't know if it makes sense. Does it make sense? I don't know. I have to think about it. No, you've thought about it. You know what you want and you know what you don't want. So that's the economic development because it's fast, it's simple, and it gets you where you want to go every single time. You're not behind the 8 ball anymore. Sure, there are parts in life that we can't foresee everything, but that's just one in a lifetime. It can't be every day. That's unsettling. So, operates in the interest of bolstering the physical health of the community. That is very important. So if I feel helpless in the community, if I feel unsafe, if I feel like I'm breathing well, if I'm mentally okay, socially okay, emotionally okay, I'm happy, right? But if I'm not, you know how that feels. That promotes health in the community. Walking is good for you. Connecting to people is good for you. Breathing great air is good for you. Beauty is good for you. I think there's one word here is like happiness, right? It's identified as the number one factor for longevity by doctors. Hey, science, happiness. Happiness. If you're not happy, do you want to come to work? Yuck. Do you want to leave the house? No. Right? But if you are, you race to it. So that's health. That's health. 3 more before I lose them all. Okay? So the last one, Evan.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes. Whoa. Oh, no, that was my surprise. Come on. All right. 3 more. It's precise. So it's typological in nature. Type. I want this type. I don't want this type. I want it here. I want it like that. Concrete. It is experience derived metric replacing abstract gauges of future development such as floor area ratios. That has destroyed our nation. Okay? Experience. What experience do I want? So when you go out shopping and you get a great experience, it's great, right? What about when you're treated like, I don't want you to buy my stuff? You don't buy only because of the great product. You buy because of the experience. Sometimes you buy because you don't need it, but oh my God, it was a great store. She was so nice, right? How could I say no? And you buy it. It drives the economy. Please continue to do so. I don't want you to deter from shopping. But it's the experience that drives you there. So if you go to a downtown to get a cafe, to go to a coffee shop, to meet a friend, it's not just because I want a coffee, right? Look at Starbucks, what they did. And they're all sprawled out. But look what they did inside of the building. Sofas. You saw the show Friends. Yeah, that's Starbucks, right?
The trouble they get into.
I know, a lot. I know. They're trying to teach us stuff, right? But please go to cafes. So you have sofas. You have the wonderful smells and aromas of teas and coffees. You have people on their laptops. They're reading books, right? And it's kind of exciting, and at the same time it's sad because they have to do it in the middle of a parking lot. But sometimes they're in the downtown, and that's great. That's the experience. You go for the experience, not just for the coffee, not just because it's expensive or cheap. It doesn't matter. It's integrated, above all. Current planning and development practice results in a process in which individuals end up working at odds with community interests. That happens every day. Why would you want that? Right? At odds. I want this, but I don't. Let's discuss it forever. Continuance. Let's table it, and on and on and on. It never ends, right? And then people come here and they really complain. Why do I want this near? Why is this? What is going to happen? Why am I here? Why is this happening in my house? Why don't I know about it? Why can't I just go home and relax and not worry about what's happening next week? Well, this takes away that worry. Takes away that conflict, right? So building projects dominate. Projects for buildings. And often are as big as possible and deny the public realm. We don't want that, right? So we want it to be integrated. We want the opposite of that. Last, it's binding. So again, it's in your hands. It's the rule of the town. So FBCs are cast in terms of standards, low or high. We want them high, right? That are obligatory. You're not going to sway from them. They're not guidelines. Hey, more or less, keep within here from A to D, you're fine. No, they're specific and they're standards. We want this to be high standards. We want to have this height. We want to have this form. We want to have this color. We want it to be over there, not over here. We want it to function this way. Those are the standards, okay? And that are optional, usually guidelines. They're not optional. So standards provide development direction proactively. You're not on the receiving end, and reward adherence to the community vision that they represent. Following the standards appropriate to a project speeds up the process of getting it entitled. You get it. It's by right. You don't have to fight anymore because you thought about it beforehand. Lastly, uncertainty about neighbors' intentions is minimized, as we've spoken. A community can come to control its destiny with confidence, above all. And lastly, my little suggestions as usual. I always do this. I'm sorry. Books you can read. Some are small, some are big. I'll explain briefly each and every one. So you have the new Civic Art. I'm not going to ask you to probably deambulate with 1922 Vitruvius. That's a little bit back there. That is the updated version about today. Down here you have the Art of Building Cities. That's Camillo Sitte, 1889 in Austria. He started to see how cities were coming apart back then with industry and all that, and he got really, really worried. And he looked at history and he said, hey, think about what makes a great place a great place. And he started to think, that book is about what we talked about, the palaces, the cathedrals, the squares, your parks, your housing, all of that, how the components of history, regardless of style, come together to create place. It's a good historical thing. You have form-based codes. That's a manual, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all that's great. The Human City updates Jane Jacobs' The Life and Death of Great American Cities from 1962. This one talks a little bit more about connectivity today and how we have updated. Again, Jane Jacobs was a groundbreaking woman, absolutely radical for the time because she said people matter. Like, no, they don't. They wanted cars. In 1960, can you imagine? I was born in 1962. Like, she was yelling out, no, people matter. And everybody, no, cars matter. She was considered radical. Now it's taught all over the world. And that's an update. So, two more. The Smart Growth Manual. Again, walkable, sustainable cities. There's a manual for it. It's coming out of Grow Smart America. Okay? And last, this is a very recent book, Welcome to Your World, by Sarah Goldhagen. It is how the built environment shapes our lives. It's how neuroscience has helped us to understand what we think and how we feel in places, how we orient ourselves. Wayfinding is not a bunch of signs going left, going forward. It is about how the built world, architecture, public and private realm help us to guide us. So when you see an obelisk somewhere, or you see a great building, say, well, you take a left at the library, you see it's a great building, it's yellow, it's blue, it's whatever it is. Then you turn left, you see a roundabout, and you see this other great building, that's where I live. That's wayfinding. It's been like that for thousands of years. That shows us how we understand space so we can design better. I hope I haven't been too long. Thank you for your time and your patience.